All righty. Well, thank you everyone for joining us this afternoon for our workshop on blue ocean strategy. My name is Cameron Law, and I serve as the Executive Director here at the Carlsen Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. I'm joined by two of our team members. We have Arlene Miranda, who leads our marketing and operations, as well as Brian Gladden, who serves as one of our entrepreneurs in residence and will be taking you through our workshop here today on blue ocean strategy. For those of you that are just getting to know the Carlsen Center, we serve as a regional hub and platform for providing approachable and accessible entrepreneurial education, community, and support to enable startup founders of all backgrounds to explore and launch their businesses. And we are on this mission to make innovation and entrepreneurship pervasive throughout the greater Sacramento region. And with that, trying to build this region into being a premier hub for innovation and entrepreneurship. So we're really excited to have you in the space. This is one program and support, which is our ecosystem partner workshops, or just our workshops to provide you with tools to support you in the startup journey. This falls under one of our three core areas of programming, which is Discover. The other two are Build and Launch, and we are excited to be potentially working with you across that entrepreneurial continuum. So for today, Brian's going to be leading us through the session on blue ocean strategy. Just a little bit of housekeeping. We would love for you to use the raise hand feature if you have any questions as we're going through the content, or if you're not able to use the raise hand feature, feel free to throw it into the chat. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Brian, who will be leading the way. We have this recorded, so we will be sharing this after, as well as the slides. So thank you for being here, and take it away, Brian.
Cool, thanks, Cameron. Welcome, everyone. It's great to see some familiar faces. So several of you have been to other workshops, so we love having you guys back again. Obviously, you saw some value in the other one, so that's great. I'm going to start to share. All right, everybody seeing that okay?
You got it.
Very good, cool. All right, so blue ocean strategy, creating uncontested market space is what we're going to talk about today. So I'm curious how many of you can put a emoji in your window, have heard of blue ocean strategy, or somewhat familiar with it. You see Margarita, yes. Vitor, yes. Anyone else? Stephen, yes. Christ's son, yes. I think no Vitor. Okay. All right. Aaron, yes. Patty, all right. Very good. So some of you are familiar. Fantastic. So what are we going to talk about today with blue ocean? Really the need and problem with innovation, why we should innovate. And hopefully all of you know you should, but we'll talk about that. What is blue ocean strategy? How to shift from a red to a blue ocean? And then what are some examples of blue ocean strategy? As well as you're going to do an exercise yourself on using one of these tools. The big takeaways that I hope that you get from today are, one, that you can explore and innovate with proven frameworks. Blue ocean is one of the leading proven frameworks you can use. Number two is non-customer unmet pains and needs should be your focus for innovation, whether it's using this blue ocean framework or any others. Blue ocean strategy provides a roadmap to find uncontested market space. And that really is the key, right? That differentiation. The problem, and COVID exacerbated this, is that most executives understand at some level that you want to innovate, you need to innovate, and actually opportunity like a pandemic, a crisis actually provides an opportunity for us to innovate, whether it's startup or corporate innovation. But as you can see in the 21 percentile, not many executives or entrepreneurs, if some of you are, actually feel comfortable trying to innovate, looking outside your market, exploring new areas of growth. We're trying to keep the lights on. We feel comfortable doing what we're doing. We don't think we have the expertise and resources to go out exploring and become, a leader in a new market, creating a new market. And that's what we're going to talk about, how you can raise that, one, awareness, two, lower your risk, and three, feel much more comfortable about doing that. So the problem with innovation, this might not be new to many of you, that almost 3/4 of all new product innovations or services flop. So innovation is not something that is easily done. Most executives are not satisfied. 94% are not satisfied with their company's innovation performance, right? So McKinsey. So everyone's looking to do better in innovation. The problem historically is that we have not had formal systems in place to make innovation a sustainable, repeatable, low-risk thing to do. The solution, according to Accenture, the bottom line is innovation can work better when a formal system exists. So whether it's Blue Ocean or other tools, you need to have formal systems, just like you do for finance, for HR, Lean Six Sigma for manufacturing. We have all these great processes in the rest of our organizations. When it comes to innovation, hardly anybody has formal processes, right? It's like, oh, that idea sounds cool. Let's go do it. Well, first of all, we need to figure out, is there a market? How big is it? What are the things people care about? And then we have to go out and validate those things and talk to people. This gets us to this idea of exploiting and exploring, becoming an ambidextrous organization. I'm curious, how many people have heard that term before? You can put another emoji up there, ambidextrous organization. I don't see any emojis yet. Okay, so Aaron says yes. All right, Aaron. So this is an interesting term, and I love it because when you think about what we do, whether you're a startup or corporate innovation, we try and exploit our current market, right? We are trying to drive down our cost. We're trying to do things more efficient. We are trying to take market share away from our competitors. And we have this, circle you draw, and here's my market, and everything you do is within that. So it's really a zero-sum game unless, you're growing at 3-5% market in general. Great. But when we look at and think about exploring, how do we break outside that to find more customers, new demand with what we can do? And this is this battle between how do we explore and how do we exploit? And over here on the right-hand side, I'm going to get my annotation little laser so you can see me. All of us try and improve what we're doing, right? Our existing business model, we try and execute better. Again, we have forecasts and plans, throughput, sales funnels, right? Manufacturing, better at what you do. And that's table stakes. That's just, you need to do that to stay in business. But it's a different skill set, different business models, different risks to then go out and try and invent new things, explore new markets, search for new customers and problems to solve, figure out new solutions that you can build to solve those problems. So most people don't do it. So we have to understand that we have to have two different mindsets and skill sets, and it's not usually the same business model. So if we go into it understanding that our risks are different and our mindset's different, you can then start to put the right resources and time and effort to exploring and understand that you're still doing your exploiting in a different area. Blue Ocean strategy is one of these leading methods to help us explore, right? It's not about helping you drive down your costs internally and do better forecast and execution. It's all about exploring new space, finding space that no other competitors exist currently. Could be in your market, it could be outside your market. And so this is one of those leading tools. I'm curious to open this up for a couple minutes and get your feedback. What formal processes do any of you use now to explore and find unmet demand outside of your core capability, your core market? Anybody, please unmute if you've got a comment. Love to hear how you do this now, whether it's shoot from your hip or whatever.
There we go, Aaron. Go ahead. You're muted, just FYI.
Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
We can.
Okay. Oh, great. Yeah. So we use like the innovation funnel sort of approach. So it's, sort of the idea storming, and then you go through, product market fit, and then sort of validation. But there's I mean, objectively, there's not an enormous amount of let's say resilience in the underlying model, if you know what I mean. You know, it eventually gets pretty subjective. So in the beginning, it gets pretty categorical and well documented, but as you kind of tighten the funnel up, you know, the executive feels and vibes sort of take over, and eventually someone makes a decision that way.
Mm-hmm.
Once in a while, I'm not going to say it doesn't always happen. It always happens that way, but sometimes if a client has such a very strong point of view, then obviously that will gear the whole process. But if they don't, which is probably 75% of the time, it turns kind of into a hippo kind of decision-making process.
Yeah, understand. Yeah, so that, and I wish I had the slide. You're talking about the innovation funnel. You got your ideation, and then hopefully some corporate alignment. You know, does this even fit with our vision, who we are? And then great, let's take those ideas and build some models and figure out, is there enough market here to go after? And can we even do these things? Feasibility, right? Like we talk about in some of our other workshops. And then validate those things, as Aaron said. Hopefully you're talking to actually potential prospect customers. A lot of times, even the Fortune 500, right, we'll sit around the boardroom and people go, yeah, let's do that. And they don't even go out and talk to potential customers. So there's really high risk there. And so thank you, Aaron. And what Blue Ocean can do, and we'll talk through this in all those areas, from the ideation, looking at things differently, as well as then trying to help you figure out those new areas to play in. Is there enough market to go after? But one thing it doesn't do, is because it's a framework, it doesn't tell you, right, how to do the experiments. So we all, and no matter what innovation tool you're using in framework, Lean Stack, Strategizer, Blue Ocean, right, all the other ones that are out there, leading tools, we have to go out and validate that our assumptions are actually correct. Otherwise, we're really building risk into our models. And so whether it's this one or any other tool, once we have an idea, we need to go out and talk about that to customers and get feedback, hopefully evolve our ideas and prioritize them. So we won't get into that today. That's going to be another workshop on testing ideas, but we have to do that no matter what. Thank you, Aaron, for sharing. What is Blue Ocean strategy? Think about it in simple terms. Red oceans are all of the current markets that we play in. It's the existing market space that you and your company play in now, whatever that industry is. We're always trying to beat the competition, right? If you're taking 2% from somebody, you know, gaining market share, normally you're taking it from somebody else. Otherwise, you're just growing at the same rate everyone else is. We're trying to exploit existing demand, right? Do things better, more efficient, better service, better sales. And usually you make that value cost trade-off. Are we at the high end of the market? You know, are we the Ritz and Tiffany, really premium, high price product? Or are we, you know, low end, Costco, Walmart, things like that? And most of us maybe are somewhere in the middle, just trying to do things, you know, maybe locally, better with sales, again, better with service. That's how the majority of business works. We're trying to align the system of a firm's activities with our strategic choice, right? Are we going to be differentiation or low cost? You know, their channels, our sales, distribution, marketing, it all kind of goes in hand. But if we look at Blue Ocean, it is about creating new uncontested market space. It's not about battling competitors and trying to take market share from them. By definition, if it's a blue ocean, a new space, there is no competition. So you're making the competition irrelevant. Like, we don't care what they offer, because we're going after new customers that have maybe complementary or related problems that we can solve. We're trying to create and capture new demand, not the same demand. Could be the current customer, it could be a new customer. And we're trying to break that value cost trade-off. So we could still be a high value item and have it at a low cost, because you are setting the playing field. You're creating the parameters. I'm curious if any person on this call, if your company has created the market you're in. Yeah, nothing existed before you got there. I'll just pause and see if anybody, is that's the case. Okay. So usually when we go into a market, right, you already know there's competitors. You kind of have an idea, well, here are the most important things we have to compete on to beat so-and-so, XYZ firm, right? Here's my main competitors. So we always position ourselves against the competitor, and you always have these boundaries of, well, here's the market we compete in. And you'll always hear some things that we'll talk about, like, well, why can't you do this? You know, customers say, well, I want this instead of that. And we say, well, we just don't do that. Well, those are opportunities that we'll talk about, you know, maybe potentially adjacent markets, substitute markets. So blue ocean space, when I think about this and people have a hard time, well, where is this space? What is this? It could be just a very small, you know, call it pimple off of your current market, or it could be some adjacent substitute market that's, you know, complementary in nature, but, you know, nothing to do with your current space. And that blue ocean space in between that usually is what we're trying to find. And you've got a core capability. How can we use that and maybe slightly change our offering to meet the needs of another customer that's an adjacent market? An example would be, you know, concrete and grass, real simple, right? So we're in California, most of us, and there's always a drought. So you look around, oh, sorry here, loud noise. If you look around, you see people ripping out front yards, right? And putting it in with hardscape, cement and bark, ripping out the grass. Well, concrete would be one industry, right? Grass would be usually another industry, maybe related and adjacent, but now you have a crossover. The whole goal and the functionality of the job to be done is just to put something in my front yard, right? So now that job to be done could be met by both of those services. The riskier something gets farther, you know, farther away from your current core capability, the riskier it gets. So you might just want to focus on something very near to you, and that's fine. It could just be the simplest new solution, you know, new to a problem that exists that no one in your market has done. And we'll show some examples of that. I just touched on this, but the farther you get away from your current, you know, capabilities in your market, the riskier things get. But we need to understand that you're in your current market, your current capabilities. You start to look in farther new markets that maybe you have to change your product line, you change your service, your distribution, your channels. Then it gets riskier, and we have to do that testing and validation much more in depth to lower that risk. What are some red ocean traps that we might fall into? Well, the first one is most of us in our current industry markets, we focus on making current customers happier, right? Customers king, they're always right. That is fine for your current market, yeah? You want to keep them happy. But when we think about blue ocean shift and a mindset, we want to focus on non-customers' pain points to expand our market. It's not about our current customers. That's on your exploit market, right? We're exploiting, we're doing that better. This is over here, we're looking for new customers. How do we find them? The second trap is we focus on niche strategies, right? We're trying to segment and divide our current market, you know, the piece of the pie, into smaller and smaller. We're like, oh, well, we'll just do this very small thing that we're already doing to our current customers. Okay, well, it's still the same market size. So you're not really finding new demand, right? You just might be dividing the pie up differently. What we want to do is focus on commonalities across different buying groups in other markets, like we talked about, substitute, adjacent, that you can find the commonalities, not the differences, but that commonality could be something that your offering could solve. An easy one there on trap number 2 is, right, think about Steve Jobs and Apple. Okay, no customer came to Apple and said, I need an iPhone, right? There was no concept of the iPhone. So they looked at what's out there. We have computers in your desktop, right? And you had phones. And people kept saying, well, I want to be able to do my compute work on being mobile, on the road, right? I want to be able to do all this stuff without having to be tied to a desktop computer. And I want to be able to use my phone, you know, to do similar things. So he combined those jobs to be done together. No one would have predicted what that form factor looked like, but they had that expertise to do that. A third trap is thinking technology creates new markets. Technology is an enabler. It's not the solution. So a lot of people, unfortunately, us being near Silicon Valley, right, Northern California, most of us, people make stuff because they can. It doesn't mean anybody wants it. So don't just start making stuff because you're technology savvy and a coder and you're like, great, I know how to do this. Cool. But besides you and your mom, who's going to buy it? So first of all, we need to understand that the technology can enable a new solution, accelerates, learning and adoption, and accelerates the speed of innovation. But by itself, the technology is not going to solve the problem. That's what we call invention, right? Inventing something is easy. Innovation is a leap in value for the customer. They're very different things. So that blue ocean shift mindset we think about as value innovation as the goal with Blue Ocean strategy. What's that mean? Well, it means that we're tying technology to a leap in value for the customer. A blue ocean has to have a leap in value, right? Some value add to the customer saying, wow, that is significantly better than my old solutions, the old alternatives that solve my problem. You could still have it at a very low cost and charge a high price. The customer now is getting a leap in value. The fourth trap is that you don't have to disrupt or destroy to replace old solutions, right? The term disruptive innovation, disruptive technology is cool. I love it. It's awesome because it's, just like the buzzwords. But you don't have to disrupt. Creation, by definition, is more powerful than disruption, right? Creating new life, creating new things. So if we can create something new, we don't have to worry about disrupting a competitor, disrupting another market. We're just focused on the customer and creating a new solution. Sometimes you get collateral damage and you'll disrupt something. Oh, well, so be it. Think of Uber in the taxi market. Uber did not set out to disrupt the taxi market. It was collateral damage. They set out to solve the problem of, rural people like me in Roseville, Rockland trying to get a ride. Or even in an urban setting where there's no taxis around. And they did it in a different way. Technology enabled it. It just so happened that it obviously disrupted some of the taxi market, but they were going after people who were not taxi goers. So to prove that point, raise your hand or thumbs up. How many of you consistently, month after month, were taxi goers before Uber and Lyft existed? I'm not seeing any hands, right? It's occasionally, usually, right, when we're on business trip. Okay, Arlene was. When Uber and Lyft came out, how many of you consistently, monthly are an Uber or Lyft user? Okay, I'm seeing lots of emojis go up. So right there shows that we weren't customers of the taxi market. They weren't disrupting us being a taxi user. They found a need with new customer. We were new customers for Uber, but the commonality was I need to get from point A to point B. How can you help me do it in a better way that provides more value to me? Technology enabled that. All right, and our last kind of trap and mind shift is focusing on that value cost trade-off, right? We think we have to be either low cost or a high premium thing. And at the end of the day, we're saying that you can do simultaneous pursuit. The customer, you could have a really low cost, $1 a unit, and you could still charge 100 if the value the customer is getting is significantly, at or above $100, right? Doesn't mean you have to price it low just because your cost is low. So this is what Blue Ocean mind shift is all about and how we're looking at finding new demand. So the question is, do you want to continue focusing on your red ocean and doing what you're doing? Or do you want to focus on a blue ocean, right? Swim with the sharks or jump into the right where it's clean water. So this is really what we're going to talk about. And one of the sayings I like to say that created is, many of you might be in companies that have long-standing products or services, right? And that life cycle could be ending soon. Every product service has a life cycle, even companies. So the question is, how are you going to replace that cash cow in your company with something else? So I say that the current cash cows, you're in your red ocean, that revenue profit is funding your next blue ocean. You need to so put those processes in place so you don't have this gap like, okay, now what do we do? Our product is dead. Somebody else is coming to our market. We always have to have this continuous innovation to keep ahead. I'm going to stop there, see if there's any questions.
So if you have any questions, feel free to use the raise hand feature. If you want to throw it in the chat, I can help bring that question on in as well. Or feel free to just unmute and ask away.
All right. See some more folks join. Thank you. Glad to have you. We'll keep on it. So how do we shift from a red?
Sean, did you unmute?
I did. I was going to ask Brian. You asked the hypothetical question a moment ago, as if it were a choice between red and blue. Is it a viable answer to say both?
Yeah. So I assume you're in a company now, and you guys are in a competitive market. Is that a good assumption?
Correct.
Right. So you're in a red ocean, like most of us, right? Which is fine. I mean, we know there's market share there, right? We know there's a need, and we're trying to solve it. So that's cool. We're in our red ocean, so we're making money. The question is, do we know when that product or service that's our king, our cash cow, I mean, when's that thing going to end? So we know at some point it will, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. The question is, can we then start to look to explore at the same time that we're also exploiting, which is back to those first slides. And that revenue, right, that cash cow should help us fund that next blue ocean, because we know at some point it's going to end. And, you know, you don't want to just turn the lights off one day just because the product life cycle is dead.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Cool.
Brian, can I add one comment there?
Of course.
Was just, yeah, I think I love the way you put it sometimes, is using your red ocean to fund the blue ocean. And then, you know, at some point your blue ocean will become a red ocean, and it's the next thing, right? So it's continually iterative, right? Even the example of Uber, right? Lyft came into the market, and now there's, Grab or a bunch of other ones that are across the world. So as those become competitive markets, so then they expanded to food delivery or things like that. So what are those next things you're going to fund to continue to grow and innovate?
Yep, great comment, spot on. All right, keep them coming if you want to. So how do we shift from the red to blue ocean now that we know what they are and why we should try and find them? So the first thing is perspective, right? The mind shift. And we're usually focused on our current markets, right? All of us, and that's normal business, that's fine. So we have to get out of that mindset and look past our normal current markets and trying to find and hear and see these new potential opportunities. So a quick little exercise. So you're in a safe space, since I can't, close your eyes. I can't reach out and touch you. So all of you quickly close your eyes for 10 seconds. Now think in your space you're at, think about all the things in your space that are red. Don't cheat. Okay, open your eyes. Charles, I'm going to call on you. Are you able to unmute? All right, there you go. All right, do me a favor, close your eyes. Tell me all the things you saw that were blue.
I saw I was just thinking about my computer. I was thinking about the telephone. I was thinking outside, that were all blue. That's
okay.
Yeah.
All right, good. Yeah, open your eyes. So obviously I said think about red. So you're like, okay, you told me to think about red. You asked me about blue. Right. So silly, simple exercise, but think about this. You bought a new car, right? We've probably all done this for a used car. And all of a sudden you're driving, you're like, man, that guy's got the same car, lady, that I got. I mean, I bought a red Porsche, there's a red Porsche. You're like, where all these things come from? Because you're aware of it now. I mean, before you didn't notice it. It's not like they all popped up all of a sudden. Same thing with opportunities, right? So we're focused on our red ocean. I looked at everything that's red. So you hear and see opportunities every day that are about your industry and your market, right? And what you do. Everything else is noise to you because you don't care about it at this point. But like, that analogy of a new car, those opportunities are there. We just kind of tune them out, just like the red and the blue just now, right? So when somebody in your team or customer service or a salesperson, says, well, hey, customer X wants this, and normal response is, well, we just don't do that, right? I bet you right now you could probably write down 3 or 4 things, each of you, that your sales teams or you or your customer service people consistently say, hey, can we do this? Customers ask for this. And we usually say, no, it's not what we do. It's not in our industry. Well, someone is going to solve those problems, right? Those are pain points for customers, and they're asking you to solve that problem. And we have to think outside the box, especially now with Blue Ocean. Well, what are these opportunities and problems that I think that I could solve potentially with my core capabilities, right? If I slightly augment that. So we just have to raise our awareness of things past our market boundaries that might be complementary to us. The second is a roadmap, right? So Blue Ocean is, and Charles, thank you for playing along, a proven roadmap we talked about. And if we have steps at least that move us from, that ideation to validation and looking at how we can create this new space, that will help us with sustaining it, making it scalable across our organization, right? Making it less risky because now people are bought into the same thing. And that next piece is the human centered, right? It can't just be you, the executive, the CEO, the founder. It's got to be the whole enterprise, the whole team. Think about I talked about the life cycle ending. So if you're a manufacturing plant, you've been doing it for 30 years, and you got your plant foreman who's been the same guy running the plant for 30 years, and he's been doing great, but that product now is dwindling, right? The life cycle is ending and some new technology is taking over. Well, you just don't want to come in and say, oh yeah, we're switching over here, we're pivoting, we're going to be starting to make this thing now. And that guy is like, well, what am I going to do, right? Why didn't you ask me about this? So obviously he doesn't want to just be out of work. He wants to provide value. When you involve him saying, hey, Joe's example, we know this product's dwindling. He probably knows that. What can we do? What are some ideas you have that can help us get this next thing, right? If we get people to have skin in the game, they're going to see things from different lenses, different opportunities that we can bring to the table, ideate differently, whether it's, a salesperson is going to have a different view than an HR or a manufacturing person. So we bring them to the table, ask them to help us with where are opportunities, what have you seen? Could be from a technology perspective. How can we, rearrange or reassemble what we do now to offer it in a different way? That buy-in is key for your culture, for sustaining innovation and making it across the enterprise, not just you, the executive. So how do we do this? What is this process? Well, the first thing is to figure out, when we start it, where is the right place to start? And this could be the team members, maybe one from different organizations in the entity. So, finance, manufacturing, again, HR and executive. So you have a different points of view across the enterprise, as well as what is that product or service? You might have a portfolio of a bunch of different things that you sell or make. What's an area that you think either is dying and that you really need to focus on because it's your big cash cow, or an area that is trending, that is the new wave of the future for your industry, and you really want to tap into that and understand how you can be a piece of it? Once we do that, then we can understand, well, how do we play now? We've always have to create a foundation, a baseline. How do we compete now? What are those factors we compete on against our competition that the customers care about? And how really different are we than our competitors? Without that, honestly, we're pretending most of the time that we're, all that we're drinking our own Kool-Aid. So we kind of have to have this really objective look at how do we play right now, so that we know where we could change in the future. And then that's imagine where we could be, which is really this ideation, like Aaron talked about, looking at possible new ways of doing something, new products, finding new problems we're solving is really the key. And we do that through really looking at the market and how people are using potential products and services. And then we got to figure out, okay, now how can we get there? We see a problem. How can we get there? What can we do to reconstruct market boundaries, change what we do, develop alternative ways of delivering what we do that would solve that problem. And then launch, right? And hopefully we do that with feedback from customers, focus groups, interviews, really reducing that risk, getting that MVP out there, testing and failing quickly, and learning from that. So it's not just one big bet, right? We trying to do this with as lowest cost and time as we can. So let's look at the tools that happen in each of these different stages. Get my red boxes. So the first one is called the Pioneer Migrator Settler Map. And what is this? Well, basically, it is the starting point to help the rest of the people in your organization understand why in the heck we need to innovate at all. Some people are like, man, we're doing great. You're talking about innovation. Let's just keep doing what we're doing. We're killing it. Okay, well, that's awesome. But we all know that, especially in technology sectors, your life cycle, that product or service is really low. I mean, could have been decades, and now it might be only, a year or two, especially if it's a technology thing. So how do we get from being a Me Too company? If you're a settler, that means you and your competitors all kind of look alike. You all have the same features, you offer the same things. Maybe you're a better sales guy or sales lady, and you're better at service. And you're like, that's our calling card. We're awesome at those things. Okay, well, that only gets you so far. You're a Me Too. If I'm looking to buy you versus your competitor, unless I have a personal relationship, you all look the same. Then you have the migrators. You're a little bit better than your competitors. Maybe it's technology, maybe it's the delivery, or the use of that thing. Okay, that's cool. How can we continue to separate ourselves and be a better value to our customers? And then there's those pioneers. And these are few and far between, where you've created something that no one in your industry has, right? And that's rare. Sometimes we might think there are, but if you ask other people, like, yeah, it's not too much different than so-and-so. But if there is, then that's a big area to focus on to help make sure, if that's just an idea, maybe you have a whole backlog of roadmap ideas that you like, here's our trends in our industry, AI, cybersecurity, right? All the things that are trending now, cloud as a service. And you're like, yeah, we haven't done that yet, but we know we need to. Great. Then get everyone on board to say, let's look at how we could do something there and create that next blue ocean space. And if everyone does what we usually have everyone do, their own map, like here's, in this case, there's obviously a lot of products or services. Each one of these dots represents a product or service in that company, like our portfolio. And what we would do is I would say, okay, Arlene, Cameron, take your own canvas and you put a dot where you think we compete. Are we the same as company XYZ? Or are we a little bit better, or are we just amazing? And this is today and this is tomorrow. You might have a roadmap of products. And the size of the dot means this is how much revenue we're actually getting from this product or service. So it should be kind of, a real world. And usually what you see is most of them are around here, the Me Too's and migrators. Not too many are up here. And then in the future, this is wishful thinking. We want everything to go up to the right. Usually you'll see things going down to the right instead of up to the right. This may be a cash cow product or service. It's been going great for 20 years, but we know in 5 years, technology, is going to overtake it. It's going to be dead. So it's going to dwindle. And that's when we talk about how does that cash cow, we see the writing on the wall. How do we then take that to start looking at the next big thing over here? Once people do their own, they see the need to innovate because they visually put the dots where they want them to be. And you kind of create the single version of the truth. And people are like, wow, yeah, we need to innovate. All right, now what the heck do we do? The next step, once people understand the need to innovate, is to figure out how do we actually compete right now versus the industry and our main 1 or 2 competitors. And more importantly, what are the key factors that we compete on that are most important to the customer? And that last piece is key. Some people start listing all these internal things, right? Like, we have better, more efficient throughput, and we have better, safety, slip and falls. I'm like, the customer doesn't care about that stuff. That's internal, right? I don't care about your internal stuff. I care about solving my problems. What are my biggest problems of why I'm even looking at buying your product or service or using it? And how do you compete on those factors? And this is really important because this is where we then start to look at those and say, that might have been the case 10 years ago when we launched this product or service, but is it still the case? And not all competing factors are equal. You know, you might have a dozen competing factors here saying, oh, here's all the things we compete on that we know we have data on that are important for the buyer. Okay, rank them from 1 to 12. Not everything is equally important. And so we need to understand what are the most important factors right now we compete on to the customer. That's the ones that we want to make sure we're focusing on. If we think, oh yeah, certified engineers and it's got to be easy to use are the most important things. Okay, well then let's not worry about the lower ones. Let's try and move these up, right? And really focus on those levers to differentiate ourselves. And this visually represents your value curve as a company to the market. So when I look at this and you draw your dots, that's literally your value curve. And if you looked at this, would you rather have Acme's service or product or Nuco's service or product? Would you really care? I mean, you know, for Sean, you know, maybe he's more worried about ease of use, so he's going to choose Nuco. And maybe Arlene's, you know, more worried about customer service ratio, so she's going to choose Acme. But at the end of the day, the value pretty much looks the same, right? They oversect, they kind of like a me too. So what we do is we set a baseline to say, okay, here's where we are now. Let's go out and start to examine how people use our things, talk to them about what's most important, uncover insights about new problems that exist that we don't even have on here, new trends, new things have happened. I mean, think COVID. Did you have remote, whether you're a restaurant or something on there pre-COVID? Probably not, right? So everything's changed as an example. That's a drastic example, but every one of your customer markets needs shift all the time. How are we staying in tune with those needs and prioritizing them? To me, this is one of the 3 most important business tools, period, in the last 50 years. In my view, it's this. It's the value prop canvas from Strategizer, and it's the lean canvas from Lean Stack. It shows how we compete, what we compete on, where we're better, what's most important to customers, and how we create, deliver, and capture value, those 3 tools. So they work together, actually. It's not like you have to do one or the other. But here, this visually, if you did this, your team would instantly get either we're just awesome or like, wow, we're me too. We got to start to differentiate ourselves. So how can we start to go down this journey? Well, the next tool, it's called the Buyer Utility Map. And this is an awesome tool. I love this tool because it helps us. Some people say, well, I'm just not creative. And, you know, I don't know where to even start to look. So this gives you a 1-page canvas of where to start to look to find potential opportunities. What we have is up here on the top, every product or service in the world has a buyer experience cycle and life cycle. Whether it's a service that you consume or it's a product that you buy, and at some point it's going to be end of life. From purchase to delivery to use to supplements to maintenance to disposal, everything has a life cycle. Most of you and most businesses don't do everything, right? In your industry, you only probably are worried about 1 or 2 of these areas, right? If you make a computer in your Dell, you don't worry about the delivery of the Dell computer. You don't worry about the disposal of the Dell computer. You might just be worried about how it's being used. Maybe you make some additional monitors and mouses and cords. You're probably not maintaining it. You're probably letting Best Buy and the Geek Squad do that, or a third party, right? You're probably not selling it. There are some, you know, direct now purchase from them, but usually it's going to be a Best Buy and an Amazon. So where do you focus in the industry on what you do? And we put a red dot there. And then we think about what are the reasons the utility levers, we call them, that people buy our product or service. And here in this example, of using whatever this thing is we're selling, people buy it because it's simple. They buy it, the red dot means this is where we currently focus. What we can do then, got ahead of myself, is we can look at all the reasons people buy something. It's productive, it's simple, it's convenient, lowers our risk, it's fun and image, or it's environmentally friendly. Usually something falls into a bucket here. You might be really unique and have something else, fine, you can add it there. But we have 36 boxes now, right? 6 here and 6 here, that we can look at and say, okay, in purchasing my service or product, is that a main reason, because of productivity? Is that why someone does it? Or is it because they buy it because it's convenient to purchase it? Using my product or service, does, in here, this case, the industry buys and focus on the productivity. What we can do then is start to look across by the time someone actually buys it. How do they buy it? How do they get it delivered? How do they use it? How do they get add-ons to this thing? How do they maintain it? How do they dispose it? You could walk through the customer journey yourself, pretend you're the customer, and say, you know what? It's really difficult to purchase stuff quickly in our industry. There is an opportunity here. There's a blue ocean potential. Let's put a blue dot there on fun and image. So I'll give an example of that one. I actually have a picture I didn't put here, but GE washing machines. We don't think of GE washing machines. We don't buy them because they're fun and have a cool image, right? We buy them because it's functional. And you're like, okay, I want it to be really productive, right? And clean my clothes. That's why we buy a washing machine normally. Well, they talked to people and found out, what if you live in a one, not even one bedroom, but just a studio apartment in San Francisco, and you are having people over, everything is there, right? There's no laundry room, there's no hidden things, so everything is out in the open. How can we make it look more like a nice piece of furniture, that it's cool, it's eclectic? So they actually created, it looks like a big black obelisk with no buttons, no lights, no dials on it. It's just this huge, like you'd see like a ceramic vase, and you literally wave your hand over the top pops up, you put your clothes in, you wash the machine, but it looks like a piece of art. So they looked at that and said, there's an opportunity here for certain groups. We can, same functionality, but we're creating it in a different way. And maybe here's an example, convenience. So there's different examples. Think about eco-friendly, right? A lot of industries now, it's all about green and eco-friendly. How can you do something in a different way than you're currently doing it? So this is just a brainstorming way to think about the customer journey in your industry from start to finish and where potential opportunities might be. Doesn't mean that they're there, it's your opinion, but they might be a place for it to explore. The next step for us is to really look at, are there enough people that we think that might have these problems to solve that's worth our while? And again, this is like a back of the napkin type of estimate. Here's your current market. And we know, every market is just going to be a very small subset of all the people that are out there possible in other markets. But here's where your industry focuses. Every day, customers are entering and leaving your industry, right? They either a one-time purchase or didn't like it and going to an alternative. So these are the soon-to-be non-customers. How can we potentially look at them to bring them back? Maybe the way we sell something or deliver it and they use it is not what they expected. And then we have a much bigger group of people that just refuse to be in your industry. They refuse, guns is an easy example, right? It's like, okay, I don't want to be in that industry. I'm not a customer of that industry. I refuse, for some example. And then the third one is people that have never even thought about your industry. They might have a similar product. Again, I go back to the grass and the cement. I have grass in my front yard. And, if a cement company might not be somebody I've ever thought about, right? So if the cement company's here and I'm a grass user out here, they might be saying, hey, we're still providing the same function, the job to get done, which is to hardscape your front yard, right? Beautify it. Let us put some stamped concrete, save you some water, do an ROI. So you're like, oh, okay. it's getting the same thing done, but I had never even thought about calling a concrete company for my front yard. So we can look across these markets and say, there's a lot of people out here, maybe a smaller amount here if we change our messaging or change the offering. And here, maybe it's more about, keeping those people in, doing a better job in a certain way. And if we put some numbers to those, you easily can say, wow, all right, there's enough people here, total addressable market, that we have something to at least look into.
Brian, there was a couple of questions in the chat. So one was kind of back on the migrators and settlers. So have you ever mapped the Pioneer migrator settlers to the McKinsey 3 horizons, or is that not aligned?
Good question. I'm drawing a blank right now. I'm trying to picture the 3 horizons, and I have looked at that. I'm going to have to say I can't answer that effectively today because I can't remember how it fits. If you have some insight on that, it might jog my memory.
Yeah, so think of it as Horizon 1 is sort of doing business as, like your BAU, business as usual. Horizon 2 is sort of, think of it as sort of value improvement, or adjacent markets to the BAU. And then, H3 is, let's say you've transformed something, or you've completely innovated or disintermediated.
Yeah.
And there's a whole bunch of, obviously like a heuristic, questions around each of them and so on.
Yes. Yeah. No, great comment. Yeah. And I have looked at that, and I think that's a really good observation. I'm gonna make a note to actually map those, which I haven't done, but I think they are very aligned, and I have looked at that. They're saying the same things, and I love McKinsey stuff. I think I don't know who took it from whom, but it's very aligned. And instead of, looking at, that's more of like, it almost looks like timeline, I think, if I remember right. But we look at kind of today and tomorrow, so it's very closely related to that. I think the biggest key, and I can't remember their map, but the visualization, right?
Because what you're really trying to do based on your industry segment is align your CapEx cycle, or, not just CapEx, but, let's say substantive investment cycles around it, so that you can attempt to sort of fit market space to your horizon and where you are, and maybe the bets you can make, basically.
Yeah, I think they're really closely aligned, because here, once you get people doing it, they see the need, and the goal of this would be, okay, let's pick 1 or 2 to start with. Right, to your point, we have to have some budget to go out and, at least experiment and find if there's any opportunity here. Is it this guy we want to go after, or is it, this guy we want to make into, this guy? So yeah, absolutely good point. Really aligned.
And there was one additional question, which is, how is this 3 tiers similar / different from TAM, SAM, SOM? So kind of starting with the current market and expanding out.
Right. So perfect. That's what I was kind of getting at, is in your current market, right, you have a total addressable market here. You obviously don't have 100%. So, you're not going to get the whole addressable market. You're going to get potentially a service addressable market. If you're an automaker and that's the whole market, but you only sell trucks, right, you're only going to have a small portion as your addressable market. And then your service obtainable market, SOM, okay, gee, what can we really get of that market of trucks? Maybe 5%, right? So that's a number. If you start to do the same for these tiers, you might say, man, there's a whole lot of other people in an adjacent market using existing alternative products to ours. What is that number? $1 billion or 100 million. Okay, that's a TAM. Same thing with, these people who maybe use something else because of whatever reason. And then the unexplored, you got to put a number to it in terms of the functionality, right? What is the job they're getting done that is related to our job? Could be US, could be global, wherever your market is, but the grass and concrete kind of example, right? It's like, okay, what is the total market of that? And then you could look at SAM and SOM as well. Okay, we're only focused in Sacramento versus the rest of the world, front yards. And in that, we could probably get, okay, 1%. So it's the same exact theory, and you want to figure out, is there enough opportunity that it matters to us? Makes sense? Did I answer that good enough? Okay. I spent more time on these than I wanted to, but I wanted to make sure you understood the tools. This one here is the 6 paths framework. And basically what we do now is, okay, we've said, hey, we think there's some commonalities in some other groups, right? And they seem to be some large numbers. How do we find the right ones to go after? And again, these are opinions that we have to go and validate. Well, we could look at it from 6 different mindsets. We could look at the industry. What are alternative industries, right? And we talked about the grass and concrete as an example. You know, the term jobs to get done might be new to some of you. We talk about that a lot in some of our other webinars. We're going to talk in depth about that next week if you join us for the value prop canvas session. Jobs to be done is one of the most important concepts you need to learn, period, even if you don't use any of these tools. And that helps us understand where we could fit into another market, a substitute or an adjacent or an indirect product. Maybe it's a strategic group. You know, we're looking at across strategic groups in industry. Think about your auto industry again, right? You're not trying to sell to the entire auto industry. If you sell trucks, you're selling currently to potential truck buyers. Well, what if you're want to compete with electric? Okay, am I going to make an electric truck? So who is it you sell to now in that industry? And how could you potentially sell to more strategic groups in that industry? Same with the buyer groups. Maybe you sell to the purchasers now. You're in corporate, healthcare, and you sell materials to the purchasing agent, right? But how do we sell now to the influencer or the user, right? That are different, or the decision maker. You know, you're the parent of the kid. The kid's the influencer on the clothing, but you're the decision maker and the purchaser, right? So how do we sell to a different group? Then the scope of the product or service. You know, what's the context of usage? What are the pain points? You know, maybe using something in a different way, or adding it to another product or service. And then functional or emotional. This goes back to jobs to get done. We think about our product or service as solving a functional problem, right? Like, okay, my mouse solves the problem of me having to use my finger on the little keyboard. So it makes it more efficient. I'm able to get things done faster. But what about the emotional and social jobs? Those are just as important. Why did I buy Logitech versus something else? Well, I've had a good experience. I'm emotionally tied to Logitech. I see value in it for the price, right? Maybe I bought red because red's my favorite color versus black. So these are all things of what we need to understand of how we can appeal to a different orientation. Think about Tesla. Tesla didn't start out with the sports car, the original one, because it was functional. People didn't buy it for function. They bought it because it was emotional and social, cool, right? Because I'm now the cool kid with the cool Tesla, 17-inch touchscreen. I'm all electric. I'm also emotionally, feel I'm doing good socially, but it wasn't functional because you got to stop all the time before there was charging stations. And then time and trends. What are the, oops, wrong slide, sorry. What are the time and trends? What's happening right now? Again, cyber, AI, pandemics, the supply chains that can shape trends so you can gain an advantage. The next to last one is called the 4-action framework, or the ERRC grid. Once we go through all that talking to customers, all that validation, trying to figure out what's most important or not, we usually will realize that all these competing factors we have listed, they're not all created equal, right? We can probably eliminate some of the things that we actually do now as a feature of our offering, because the new customers don't care about it. That will save us costs. We can also reduce some of those and the way that we deliver them, because they're not that important. Maybe it's like, yeah, we need that, but it's not critical. We can reduce how much we spend on it, how much we focus on it, how much we market it. But other problems, we need to prioritize. We need to raise, maybe it's the service level, maybe it's the distribution level. And then we need to create new things, could be new technology features, could be new ways of monetizing it, could be new channels, new partners. What is it, new features that we're creating? When we do that, when we've talked to customers and figured those things out that are going to solve the new customers' problems, we then can take those and draw those on our new canvas. And this is the to-be canvas versus our as-is. Here's our old competitors. We were probably in there. We've now lowered and eliminated these things. We're like, this new group doesn't care about it. We've reduced this, still there, but we've raised these and we've added new features here that no one else in our industry has. Now we've completely changed our value curve. We're focusing on different things. Our messaging is different to these new customers, and the value is completely different to this new customer group. Might be a completely different group and a product than our current customer group. I'm going to stop there and see if that makes sense and resonated. Any questions in the chat, Cameron?
I don't see any questions in the chat. If you have any, feel free to unmute yourself or throw it in the
Okay.
chat feature.
This is like what we want to be, right? When we grow up, we want to have this cool curve that, we're really separated. That's hard to get to because at the end of the day, down here, these factors, it's not our opinion and it's not the technology features. It's the problems that are most important to the customer right now and this new customer, and how can we focus on those versus what our competitors' industry focuses on. I want to give you some examples. Hopefully some light bulbs will go off on when we do this. And this is the cool parts because you're like, I get it. Okay, that makes sense. I'm going to stop here and actually let Cameron share, and we're going to do a quick video, which is awesome, one of my favorites. I don't know if any of you are classic music fans. I wasn't, but Andre Rieu is amazing, and I want to go see him after seeing what he's done. So watch this for a minute and a half, and we'll talk about it.
Unmet.
Right, thank you, Cameron. So I'm curious if any of you know Andre Rieu or have been to a concert before? No? Okay, I hadn't either. But does that look cool or what? I mean, who I would love to go to one of those. Anybody else? Give me an emoji or a thumbs up. Yeah, Stephen, yeah. So I will talk through this now, but visually, did that look like any classic music concert that you've been to or in your mind of what you thought it would be like? So what did he do, right? Well, when we think about classic music concerts, he thought about, okay, why do people not go to classic concerts? And what do they look like in general? They're formal attire, right? Small, opulent auditorium normally, silence from the audience, right? You're just sitting there. You know, you're not, there's no one coming through saying, hey, get your peanuts, popcorn, you want a beverage, right? That's usually adults, usually an older affluent crowd. And you got usually a famous conductor, but his back is to you, right? So, you know, you would see me like this, doing this, and then I turn around and bow, and that would be about it. Traditional classic music, very expensive tickets. So what he did is said, okay, how do I change some of these things, but still do classic music so that I change the experience for a new audience who might like to go to a classic concert, but doesn't like the way it's being delivered. So as you saw that, he basically said, people love pop concerts, right? Rock. Why don't we introduce, you know, like lasers and fireworks, right? And lights and all these things you wouldn't think about in classic concerts. You saw all those, and look at the people. The people are in shorts and button down and pullover, you know, golf shirts. They're not in tuxes. They're outdoors. There's probably 5,000 of them there, right? They're crammed in. They're dancing. It's not seated. It's a completely different experience. What he did is say, okay, what can I eliminate in classical music currently, concerts? That whole serious, you know, music. They actually, for like holidays, because kids are there, they'll do like, you know, Rudolph, right? And, you know, Christmas songs and sing-along songs. It's not a stuffy auditorium. It's not an upper class feel. It got rid of all that. It reduced the formality, as you saw, reduced ticket prices, and actually reduced that whole golf clap atmosphere, right? You didn't see anybody just, oh, that was great, thank you. You know, they're all, you saw them cheering and dancing and clapping. He wanted to raise the audience engagement, you know, them being involved in it. And there's really a community of fans, like think about the network effect, and, you know, it's this whole following community and conductor engagement, right? He wanted to be more engaging with the audience, raise that level, and raise the fun vibe. So the things he created, party atmosphere, modern classical concert where you're doing more than just classic music, still using the violin and things, and then a large arena venue so more people can enjoy it. And then this last one was really interesting. You saw him face first in the whole video, right? He was playing towards the audience. Very subtle, but now that means he's engaging. So he's looking at the audience. He's, you know, talking to them. He's doing things versus completely the other way where it was all about just doing the conducting. So that changed his entire value curve versus the rest of the classical music industry, right? You saw 40 million CDs. I mean, he's talking, you know, Taylor Swift and you know, Bieber and Kenny Chesney, he's selling the same amount of CDs because he's completely changed the way that people consume classic music. Here's one of my favorite examples. We could talk about it longer, but at the end of the day, Kimberly-Clark, Brazil, their CEO was looking for help, went to Blue Ocean Institute and said, help me create a blue ocean. And this one was really not an adjacent market. It was really look at that, think of that pimple off of the current market, getting more users, new users to buy more. So they are talking to not the affluent people in Brazil, but the 99% who live in small villages and favelas and, you know, live in a very small, you know, one bedroom for probably 8 people. And they asked them, why don't you buy, when you go to the store, you're only buying, you know, 2 or 4 rolls of toilet paper. You know, why don't you buy more? Why don't you buy ours? You know, what's important? And as you see in the bottom left, you see the lady carrying an 8-pack here. The people that go into the store, usually the mom, are on light rail and trains and buses. And they're going to and from getting groceries that way. They're not taking their F-150 in the van and backing up to Costco, right? That's the 1% affluent. So they said, well, we can't carry it on the bus and train. I can only carry so much groceries and toilet paper, right? And there's no handle on it, so I can only take like a 4-pack under my arm. And when I get home, you know, we live in a small place. I don't have anywhere to store it, right? You're stacking things everywhere. I only have so much cabinet space. So they also talked about being eco-friendly. So what did they do? They said, why don't we just squeeze the roll together? That literally reduces the packaging by 40%. right here, right? All you're doing is squeezing the toilet paper roll together. As soon as you take out the package, you squeeze it and it goes right back, right? Just a cardboard roll. Well, what did that do? It dropped their cost by 20%. Think about 40% of packaging material. Think about warehouse logistics. You're now getting 40% more in the warehouse. You're now getting 40% more on your trucks to deliver to the stores, and store shelf space is gold, right? You're now getting 40% more product on the same shelf space. And you're helping mom by making it smaller. They also put a plastic handle on the bag to carry, and they made it out of eco-friendly paper. So they combine two things. That's nothing earth-shattering. It's freaking toilet paper, right? It's like, how do I innovate toilet paper? Well, find out the problem from the user. What can I do to change your experience? Very simple. If you can do it with toilet paper, you can do it with anything. Citizen M is an interesting one. So these guys went to the Blue Ocean Institute. They're hotel executives. They wanted to create their own hotel line. It started in Europe, Amsterdam and London. And they said, we're going to first ask business travelers, which is their target market. It's not the families vacation. It's the warrior, travel warrior for business, right? In the big cities. And they wanted to have a 5-star experience at a 3.5-star price. Well, that's hard to do. You've got to cut costs somewhere, right? You can't just add everything, or else you're talking rich prices. So they wanted to keep it affordable. So they asked business travelers, what do you don't really care about, and what do you really care about? And this is what they came up with. We'll talk about the curve first. They basically said, the business traveler, me and you, price we already got, 3.5-star price. I don't care about a front desk, right? Just like you're checking at Southwest, right? All I need is a kiosk. I don't need bellhops. I don't need a fancy lobby, and I don't need restaurants, which is the most expensive part of any hotel. That square footage and all that inventory and all that food and staff. We're like, why would I want to eat in your hotel restaurant when I'm in Paris or London when I can walk across the street to a 4-star, 5-star restaurant? So they got rid of all that. And they said, what I do care about is the sleeping environment, right? I want really high thread count pillows and sheets and towels. Don't give me these towels that have been used on a car wash 1,000 times. And I want free coffee and free water and free Wi-Fi. Don't nickel and dime me when I'm already paying you $300-400 a night on a $29 Wi-Fi. And then they created a self-check-in, more of a commune area, and they turned bellboys and concierge and front desk people into this ambassador who does everything, kind of an all-in-one. What's it look like? Very cookie cutter, right? You're just right downtown. This is, I think, in Amsterdam or a Belgium area. And very simple, doesn't need to be opulent. And I'll come back to this, but you notice that all the rooms, they look the same size, right? All the squares. People said, I don't need a suite, just need a nice bed and, shower, hot water, Wi-Fi. Here's the room. There's no wasted space, right? It's wall to wall. There's your bed. There's a desk with Wi-Fi. And then here's your shower, right there.
Listening to this guy.
Hey, June, you might want to mute there. So how did they do these other lowering the costs? Well, here's the example of the kiosk. This is awesome. So when you're building a hotel, the most expensive piece is all that time and infrastructure, bringing things into, downtown London, Paris, San Francisco, very expensive. So they said, okay, let's just build the structure and let's outsource building the rooms to those people who can do it cheaper than us. We don't need to build the room out. They're all going to be the same size. And we literally slide them in on these rails, reduce their costs significantly. So now they can have a much lower cost with a much higher experience, just by finding out what the customer needed. Similar thing to Cirque du Soleil. We all know Cirque du Soleil. When they first started, they said, okay, who do we compete against? Ringling Brothers, other smaller regional circuses. And they said, all right, how are we different? Well, our price is higher. It doesn't have to be lower. That's fine. There's more value. But we don't need star performers. We don't need the guy, the ringleader out there. We don't need animals. The most expensive part of any circus, animals, the transport, the feeding, the care, the cleanup. Like get rid of the elephants and the tigers. We don't need that. Get rid of aisle concessions. We don't need those. We don't need the trapeze over here and the animals are over here and the clowns are over there. Get rid of all that. We'll have one stage. So they cut their costs. We'll lower the fun and the humor. We'll lower the thrills and dangers, still have a little bit of that. But Cirque du Soleil is all about the unique venue, the theme, right? We'll create new themes every year. We'll have this more of an upscale, almost like an opera type of a setting. And it's all about art and music and dance versus clowns and animals. So it's still a circus, but it's a very different experience, right? And so you're not taking away from Ringling Brothers and regional circuses. We'd still go there. But now we have non-customers who wouldn't go there wanting to experience this. And up here, you see the eliminate, the reduce, the raise, and create. We can literally put some boxes and then, change our curve accordingly once we find out what those important things are down here. I'm going to stop there and see if there's any questions from what we just went through.
Going back there was one a little while ago. Priyanka, I don't know if your question got answered related to how do you use the 2B strategy for roles which are highly cluttered, like engineering or marketing. Did the examples help you, Priyanka? Okay, so Priyanka, are you able to maybe share what your question is so Brian can?
Yeah, thank you so much for the presentation. Till now, and I'm sorry I joined in late. I'm a little sick, so I wasn't been. But my question was, I saw just one slide about 2B strategy, and I was wondering. So it's easier for like bigger companies, but I'm wondering if you're in an industry which is a little bit cluttered and you're not like a Facebook or a Google, but you have your own niche. So I'm wondering how the 2B strategy can be used in that situation. So I think pretty much a lot of the frameworks that you shared, I had this same question coming up in my mind for a couple of them, that if you're someone like a specialist in engineering, or a specialist in marketing, or a specialist in finance, how can you use 2B strategy in that case?
So Priyanka, were you able to be here at the beginning of the presentation where we started going through the different tools?
Yes, I was a part of that, and I'm aware of the red and the blue ocean concept. So yeah,
Right.
I pretty much started when you started that.
Okay. So remember, the 2B canvas is the output at the very end. It's not something we start with, right? That is what we come up with after we do all this due diligence and talking to customers and prospects and non-customers, finding out their problems. So it's not something we start with. It's just, that's what the goal is. It's not easy to do, right? It's not like a silver bullet we can always find, but it definitely helps us reduce our risk. So it doesn't matter what industry we're in. Everybody has to innovate. It doesn't matter if you're in a engineering industry or a finance industry or healthcare or retail, we all have to innovate. So the function you're in, whether you're an engineer or you talked about maybe you're someone in finance or in IT, that's irrelevant, because we're not talking about your role. We're talking about your customer's needs. So we don't care about you internally, honestly, right? The customer doesn't care about you. The customer cares about the problems you are helping them solve. So we have to say, okay, what is it we offer? Is that meeting the customer's needs, and is the existing alternatives in the market, our competitors, do-it-yourself, adjacent markets, what is not getting done satisfactorily? When we find those pains, we then need to say, okay, is this something we can solve with what we do now? And if it is, then we say, okay, let's prioritize these problems. And at the end of that would be, how we do something to our current market now. They don't need this, right? An example is fintech. So if you're Chase Bank, you have brick and mortar stores, right? You operate in a different business model than a fintech. So fintechs have come in and said, you know what? If we drew a curve, we don't need brick and mortar stores. We don't need teller machines, right? We don't need people in an office, tellers, right? We're doing everything online. We're adding an app. We're doing things completely different. So there's an example of a fintech versus, a traditional bank. You're still solving the problem of, I need to move money around. I need to get money. I need to do banking transactions. How you're doing it, you're solving the problem in a different way. Engineering's the same thing, right? What's the problem we're solving, and what does the new group care about?
A quick follow-up question to that. Thank you for answering my question. Could you give me an example, like 3 questions that possibly can kickstart that process of asking the the customers who are in the uncharted territory to I just wanted to get an idea of what kind of questions you can ask. Say suppose you meet that kind of a person in a meeting, what do you ask them to sort of get that confirmation, or to start the process?
Yeah, sure. And so we're going to pretend that we went through all the other tools, right? That we've identified this group or this person we're talking to we think has this problem or need at least, and then maybe they're an adjacent market or a current prospect. So we're talking about the interview techniques itself, those questions right now. To do that, a lot of people have the misconception that you want to start giving survey questions or interview questions about what they will do. Would you buy this? Do you need this? Those are wrong. Do not ask what they will do. We want to find out what they've done. Past behavior is the only true evidence of what people will do. We want to find out, why did you choose this existing alternative or this competitor's product? When did you start? When did you have a triggering event saying, I need that? What was the reason you decided to buy X, Y, and Z product or service? Why from this company? And then, did it meet your needs? Did it solve all your problems, all your jobs to be done? If not, maybe they got rid of that and chose another product. Okay, tell me about that journey. Why did you choose that? What was your problem? We need to understand past behavior, because that is true evidence of what people will spend their money on and do. And from that, we can understand, what are the problems with those current alternatives? And if are they big enough worth us, and can we solve them? And those insights help us prioritize what's the most important things or the new things we need to add to our offerings that no one else is doing, right? We then take that back and say, okay, can we create this solution? When we do that, then we go back to the customer and say, hey, Mr. Customer, hopefully that's an early adopter, right? You told me you had this problem with using this thing. We've created this for you and it does this, and here's the price, right? And you get validation that, yeah, that's awesome. You build it, I'll buy it. So that's how those conversations work. We want to get past evidence. Does that help?
Oh, that was fantastic. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Great question. All right, I'm going to move on just due to time. We were going to have you do an exercise, but because of timing, we're not. But we'll talk about how we can let you do these on your own in a second. What we were going to do was to have you start to do your own as-is strategy canvas. And we'll send you the PDF. You can actually probably download them from Google, Blue Ocean Strategy, but we'll send them. The first question is, we all drink our own Kool-Aid. We all think our products and services are just awesome, right? How accurate is our mental image of ourselves, right? Our company. This visualization is key. If you sat down with the other executives or key people in your company and you had each person do this, write down what they think the most important competing factors are right now that people buy on, that you compete on, and how well on the left there, your offering level that you compete on. Are you really good or really low? And it's literal, like price could be literal. and then draw those lines to connect them. This is really, really powerful because you're going to get many different answers. Priyanka versus Charles versus Aaron, if you're in the same business, you're going to have vastly different views. And then you want to come together and say, okay, hey, why do you think that versus this? And then you create a single version of the truth for your entity, which gives everybody buy-in. We have a single starting point to go forward from and figure out now, how do we innovate? Otherwise, you have people going in different directions and focusing on different things that they think are the most important. So we will let you do this at your own time, kind of your homework as a guest here. And we're happy then to look at those and have some mentoring calls with you. But I wanted to summarize, and then we have a few minutes for questions. We talked about why we need to innovate and use proven frameworks. We examined becoming an ambidextrous organization and exploring new space. We educated you on what blue ocean strategy is. We reviewed how to shift from a red to a blue ocean. And we gave examples of blue oceans. And we did not create your as a strategy canvas yet, but we're going to give you the tools so you can do that. So I hope that through this, you see a way to innovate and grow by creating new demand, by breaking the cost trade-off and creating your own boundaries in your market and looking beyond your current market you compete in. So I'm going to stop there and throw it to Cameron, maybe open it up for a few minutes of questions.
Yeah, so just a reminder, we will share the recording and the PDF of the slides as well as some additional tools. So that being the as-is canvas, so you can get to work on that. But we do have some time for questions, and I threw some links to upcoming events that we're hosting that you can check out as well. So if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask, or use the raise hand feature. Aaron, it looks like you unmuted.
It was either so overwhelming, no one knows what to ask, or it was so awesome that you're like, I got it.
Brian, I'll say this. This is Sean Garvey, just because I have to jump at 1:30, and I chatted you directly. I found this to be very helpful. Frankly, this is an issue that we're having in two of our companies, Momentum and Emission Control, our relationship to innovation generally, and then our relationship to new product development at Emission Control. I'd like to continue the conversation, frankly, offline. And I emailed you through your website my contact info.
Thank you, Sean. I'd love to talk offline. I appreciate that, and I'm happy you got to join us.
This was exceptional. You put a lot of organization around what has been some chaotic sort of approaches to this. So.
No, I appreciate that. That's all we can do. So that's a great start. Thanks.
And I understand you're in Sacramento as well.
I am. Where are you at?
Sacramento.
Ah, hey, perfect. Awesome. Thank you, Sean.
Okay.
Anybody else? Any
I just want to say
insights?
too, Brian, thank you so much for this presentation. I'm in higher education, and in higher education, I think a lot of us are still in that red part, that we're only trying to enhance what we do, but not explore other options. So this is great. And the recruitment and marketing piece is still seems to be the same that it was probably like 10 or 15 years ago with some of our recruitment and marketing tools. So I definitely enjoyed hearing this and thinking that if we can break away and start to get into that blue part, I think we can do some wonderful things here at Sac State.
Well, let's talk, because I'm actually helping some your colleagues and others with some educational related things on business models through this university, and it would be good to chat.
Great. Thank you so much.
Thanks for joining. If you don't have a question, how about any other insights? I see some things in chat. Thank you. Any key nuggets you guys took away? Like, what's that one or two things you were like, that's the thing I wrote down. That's one my big takeaway. Don't be bashful. All right, well, that's okay. I appreciate the comments in chat, and sounds like, you know, you guys got some value, which is wonderful, and we appreciate you joining. So Cameron, I'll throw it back to you to end us.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Brian, and thank you all for being here. We're excited to have you as part of the workshop series here. Next week on Wednesday, I believe. Let's see, I'm going to confirm. Next week on Tuesday, we have another similar session, but we'll be diving into the value proposition canvas, which will help you define your value prop to attract your customers and create a solution that solves their problems. Yeah, feel free to reach out to us at the center, and I'll be following up with the slides and recording as well as the PDF to the as-is canvas. But thank you all for being here, and thank you, Brian, for leading the charge.
Brian, one quick question, if I may ask.
Sure.
Sorry, Cameron and Brian both. So each piece seems like a big puzzle. So my question is, which framework can we sort of start with? Like take one small action and sort of work on that to begin with. Like there are a lot of pieces that you shared, but which is the starting point to sort of take action?
Yeah, you might have missed it, but the beginning, right? We went through the process. So you start with, do I even need to innovate? And that's the Pioneer Migrator Settler map. And then the as-is canvas. So each of those is a sequential step that we do. So that's the process through that. Yeah, I'm happy to talk through that at a future date.
Awesome. No, thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, I remember that slide, and
Okay.
yeah, awesome. Thank you so much.
All righty. Thank you all. Bye.
Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Bye-bye.